So how do I restart an existing container? There is a command for that. Um, so it's well, I'm, okay. I'm going to show this anyway. That's not super useful because it's not very frequent to have interactive containers. But if you start a container and you're like, oh, I want to keep that container running, I want to detach from it, then there is a special key sequence to do that. It's Control P, Control Q. So for instance, if I do docker run -ti Ubuntu, and then I run like top, and I'm like, oh, I want to leave that running in the background, can do Control P, Control Q, and then you get back to the prompt. And here, if I do docker ps, I can see that my container is running. And if I want, I can reattach to it by doing docker attach and then the ID of the container. And then I get back here. It's perfectly doable to use that as a kind of glorified screen or tmux. You know, like when you have some server that you want to run in the background, you could start that in a container and then detach with Control P, Control Q. I don't necessarily strongly recommend it. I think it's great for a few projects. Like I remember, I haven't played complicated video games in a really long time, but I remember the days when we had dedicated servers that often we would run on Linux machines, and we would use some often things like screen to start the server on the command line and then detach, and then later when you're like, oh, I need to go to the next map or kick some player who's being a jerk or see the statistics or whatever, you would go to the machine and you would like reattach to that terminal with screen. Mainly because these game servers didn't have APIs or web front ends or whatever, so the way to control them was through the command line. So for that kind of use case, it can be convenient to have a container where you can attach, detach, etc. But for most, I want to say serious applications, you probably won't need that. So that's why I was kind of reluctant over spending time to explain how to detach from a container. Now, how do I restart one of my old containers? Well, that's just with docker start. For instance, I want to go back to the Ubuntu container where I had installed Figlet. So I'm going to do docker ps-a, and I'm going to try and find it. Okay, so that's my first BusyBox, that's my second BusyBox, that's my first Ubuntu, so that's the one. That's the container ID, C72 something. So I'm going to do docker start C72 and then docker attach C72. And now if I do Figlet C72, it works. So if I wanted like this pets workflow, if I wanted to have like this Fedora dev environment I was describing in a container, I could do that. I could do like a docker run on a base image, install a bunch of things, work with that, and when I'm done, I just exit the container, and when I need it again, I look, okay, what's the ID of the container? ABC123, okay, I do docker start ABC123, docker attach ABC123. I could do that. I don't recommend it because we will see soon how to build images kind of the nice way, but it's possible. One little thing that you might have noticed when we did docker start and then docker attach, when I did docker attach, at first, oh yeah.
Yeah, I did that, but it said that it cannot attach to a stopped container.
When you did docker start and then docker attach,
Yep.
So are you sure that you put the right ID? Like I'm suspecting that maybe you have put the ID of the BusyBox Hello World container. And if you do that, basically it will restart that container. So that container is going to echo Hello World and it will exit immediately.
Okay.
So double check the ID. I think this might be the issue.
Okay, so which one did you use?
Which one did I use? So I did Docker PS dash A, Docker PS dash A, and then I kind of walked my way from the bottom. So the first line here is my first BusyBox container. This is another BusyBox Hello World container, and then that one is like Ubuntu bash, and that's the first Ubuntu container I used and where I did apt-get install Figlet.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Yeah, so when I did Docker start and then Docker attach, when I do Docker attach, at first it looks like this is not working. I'm not seeing anything here. But if I do enter, now I see two lines. Like, what is this? It's perfectly normal. This is, let's go back to the servers in the data center metaphor. When you roll your little cart with the keyboard and screen to the server and you connect that to the server, an image will show up on screen, maybe, but nothing really tells to the machine that you plugged a keyboard and screen. In fact, and that's been an old but true story, it once happened to us that we plugged the keyboard and screen to a server and nothing happened. Like the screen would remain dark and you try like things on the keyboard and nothing doesn't work. So we're like, well, it appears that the machine is dead, and we would try with another cart and same thing. However, the machine was not dead. I mean, you could still ping it, and what was really weird is that if you reboot it, then suddenly the screen comes to life and everything seems fine, and you see the server booting, and at the end you have like the login prompt, and you're like, that's weird. And each time we would go to the data center, the same thing would happen on the same machine, and it turned out that the keyboard port was dead. And so when you plug the keyboard and screen on the other servers, you would see something on the screen, because just like plug in the keyboard, like it will kind of the server will detect that, and it will take the machine out of the screen saving, energy saving mode. So the screen will show up, but on that machine, since the keyboard port was dead, when you plug the keyboard, nothing happens, and so the screen remains dark because the screen is in energy saving mode. But what we eventually found out is that if you connect on the machine and you do a command to force the screen to turn on, then the screen would be on. This is exactly what we're seeing here. When I do Docker attach, there is nothing that tells my container, oh, somebody just connected, maybe you would want to show them something. So when I do Docker attach, it doesn't show me anything. However, if I'm connected to the container, so if I type commands, it's going to execute them, and if I press enter, it's going to redraw the prompt and then show me the new prompt. If this confused you, it's safe to ignore it, don't worry, because as I said, we don't really often have to attach to containers except in some very special scenarios.